Thank you very much, Tracy. Hi, my name is James Gibbons, and I'm going to be presenting the finance portion. I am a CPA and have been a controller and CFO, so I understand the process pretty good. Okay, so today what we're going to do is at the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the main financial accounting processes in SAP Business One, describe the finance basics, review financial settings, identify the sources of automatic journal entry values, explain the structure of the chart of accounts, that's chart of accounts, excuse me, it should be chart of accounts, post a journal entry, and display financial and accounting reports. I'm going to start out with a discussion on the chart of accounts. In SAP Business One, the chart of accounts is all set up in a drawer structure, as you see on here. The top three drawers feed the balance sheet, the bottom feeds the profit and loss, and the financial reports go directly to the statements. We're going to talk about the structure of the chart, how to manage it, the default accounts, and journal entries, and end up with financial reports. On the journal entry side, we'll talk about the origin documents, the journal entry files and form, reverse transactions, posting tools, posting template with percentages, recurring postings, and journal vouchers. So we'll talk about the marketing documents. As everybody knows in SAP, the invoice is considered a marketing document, as well as goods receipt PO and the AP invoices. These are the items that generate your automatic journal entries. And in the end, we'll do a quick run through of the financial and accounting reports, including the balance sheet, trial balance, profit and loss, and statement of cash flows. I'm going to log into SAP as the manager, and here we are. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is the basics setup for the financials. So if you go into the modules and you go into administration and go into setup, you'll drill down into the path for setting up your financials. In here, the three most common items that you will most likely use is editing your chart of accounts, the GL determination, which is how the accounts are distributed automatically, and your currency. So in the setup, you want to start out, here's what your edit chart of accounts looks like. I'm going to go into the asset accounts, and as you see on the right hand side, we have that drawer structure that I mentioned, and that's the structure of the chart of accounts. So you can navigate back and forth between the different levels of accounts, assets, liabilities, equity, and then on your P&L, your revenue, cost of goods sold expenses, financing, and other charges. In here, when you're in the edit the chart of accounts, you can, when you click on an account, you'll notice that this add same level account button appears. This only appears if you are using a non-segmented chart of accounts. If you are using a segmented chart of accounts, there's a different structure altogether. But in here, you can add the same level chart of accounts. Now, what you'll notice on this chart of accounts is that we have the location. The drawer is the assets, so that's level 1. And then under level 1, we got assets, the parent article, and then the drawer where it's going, location in the drawer, so that's first. The next level, we have current, the cash and cash equivalent accounts with the parent article, current assets with the parent article assets in it. So there's 3 levels, and the 4th level is your chart of accounts. So if you look at level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, you can prepare a financial statement that just displays any one of those particular levels. So in the financials, you've got the edit chart of accounts. The next is your GL account determination. Under this option, it provides you the opportunity to define where your accounting is going to be posted when the transactions occur. So your sales transactions will be posted to the following accounts. Your accounts receivable, which is a control account. You'll see right here it says that that's a control account, which means that the only way that you can post to the control account is through a marketing document, an invoice or a payment or such out of the receivables. So in here you set your sales distribution, your current asset distribution under sales, then you have your purchasing accounts. I don't actually have anything there. General, when you're doing credit card transactions, you can set up general accounts to go to. Inventory, your list of inventory accounts. Resources, and WIP mapping if you're a manufacturer, you'd do that. So that's under a GL account determination. If you want it to be a little more sophisticated than what you see here, then you would go into your administration, go into system initialization and company details, and under the options basic initialization, you would select advanced account determination as one of your options. So in that kind of setup. An additional item that you want to pay attention to in your setup will be your currencies. So if you have multi-currencies that you're dealing with, it's this table here that you would set up the different currency. I've got a foreign trading company that's got a full set of these currencies filled in. The other items on the setup are things like you can set up projects, your period indicators, which are your cash flow line items, fixed assets. I'm not going to go into any detail in there, but if you go under your fixed assets, you've got your typical fixed asset transactions, setting up your depreciation type, areas based on geography or specific asset classes and so forth. So that's what you're going to see when you go into your setup. Now finally, under the financials, we saw that here you have your chart of accounts, which allows you to scroll through. Now what you may notice in some of these accounts is when you go into the account that there may not be any transactions, but in some accounts you're going to have transactions. So you'll notice here that there is a yellow arrow that allows you to do a drill down. So if I drill into that, I can go into where the journal entries are. So if I pick something that might have a little bit more transaction, here is again your accounts receivable. It's checked as a control account. So the source of the data is from the business partners through marketing documents. And here we have the list of the journal entries. You can drill down even further and go specifically into that journal entry through that route. So as you're doing your month-end reconciliation or you're reconciling accounts, it gives you a good path through to the GL accounts. As you notice, I'm clicking and closing windows. I keep forgetting. This is the best way to do it. Close all. I'm done. Okay, so now next one was the edit the chart of accounts, which I already did show you in the setup. So there's two ways to get to edit your chart of accounts, and again you can add same level of account and you control the different levels and the parental articles for that account. Now, journal entries. This is the journal entry screen, and there's two sources of journal entries in SAP. We have automatic journal entries and we have manual journal entries. The automatic journal entries come from your marketing documents. So if I go back into this, oh, sorry about that, folks. Doesn't want to cooperate. Here we have the journal entries, again, the manual journal entries and the automatic journal entries. The automatic journal entries come from things like your AR invoice, your incoming payment, and your deposit. or a goods receipt purchase order, your accounts payable, and your outgoing payments. Those create the different automatic journal entries. And manual are typically transactions that aren't driven by the automatic journal entries. So you may have post-bank charges if your bank statement's not integrated with your financials, those type of transactions. Okay, back to the journal entry. Now when you're looking at the journal entry, you'll notice that we have the green arrows are lit up, which means that you can navigate from one journal entry to the other, back and forth. You can go to the start of the database or the table, the end of the table. The add button allows you to add a new record, and the find button will allow you to search for items. So if you're searching for an account, you can pick it out and go to that account. So the journal entries have different information across the top, basically your posting date, due date, etc. This remarks field, when it's an automatic journal entry, says this comes from an AP invoice, and V1000 is going to be your client. If you go in here, you have the origin, you have your drill down. So look, we go to here and it's V1000 Acme and Associates, and it was the purchase of a container. So we were able to drill into the accounts payable invoice through the journal entry. It tells you what the natural numbers that allow you to find that journal entry, the transaction number or the origin number. 256 should be your primary key right here. And the transaction numbers, the number that's associated, it's almost like a serial number. You have indicators that you can actually select if you want to identify further. These are really filters that you can use in your reporting, so you can define a new one and complete an indicator that you want if you want to pull a pile of like transactions. Project code is another thing that you can use. You can set up a series of projects and you can post the journal entries to specific projects. That way you can implement the project management. In the most current version of SAP, they've improved the project management functionality, so it's doing better. We have transaction codes, again, another opportunity to define new, put in a new transaction code or by somebody. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to, I can go into Control A, I'm going to add a journal entry. So when I add a journal entry, you get these different types of items that you have to complete. So I'm just going to say that that's my remark for this because it's a manual journal entry. It's foreign currency, so I'm going to select one of my currencies. If it is a foreign currency, I'm not going to do it this time. The other thing is you'll notice that here's the reverse. So if you select reverse on the journal entry, it will automatically reverse in the first day of the following period. So if you're doing January 31st, it'll reverse on February the 1st. The other aspects that you'll notice, these are gray, which means that this journal entry is not being pulled in from an original document, and anything that's in gray in SAP indicates that you can't do an entry in it. Now, we have templates that will allow us to create journal entries. So for example, we have a percentage template, and you pick your template type and then template. I created one called utility. I'm going to choose it. So how would I apply this type of percentage journal entry? I have my utilities here. I want to get this kind of a distribution for the accrued expenses and for my expenses. So in here I'm going to enter $1,000, and it automatically does the posting across the different accounts that I've set up in my percentage. So I can go back in, I can say, okay, let's add that, and now I've added that journal entry and it's posted. So it's real time, it's not batch, so you don't you don't have to wait and post a whole bunch of journal entries at a single time.
James, can I say something a second?
Sure.
I just want to remind everybody, because James just showed us something where he was talking about project management, and I don't know if everybody had assisted with the webinar that we gave that was on project management, but I do have recordings of those, and they're really interesting. So if anybody is in version 9.2 right now and wants to learn a bit more about project management and then maybe dig in deeper on journal entries with project management, send me an email, because I have these recordings and it would give you a good idea of what we do now with project management, which might help you out a bit more with the journal entries with project management. So I just want to specify that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's basically the journal entries. If you want to find a journal entry, you can actually use the Control F key. That will give you find. And if you use an asterisk, it's going to act as a wildcard filter, and it'll bring up all your journal entries. Now, the cool thing about these lists is that this keep visible is pretty handy. So say you're going in and you're analyzing a whole group of accounts for your year end, and you don't want to keep going back into a list of journal entries because you know you're going to be there, then you can do keep visible. And then you can sort by date. I want to see it by date. Okay, so now you can search for a date, or you can search for a specific account, or you can even search for an amount. So that'll gives you an opportunity to filter and have a look. The other area that's lit up is this filter. So if you go into the filter, you can actually go in and say, look, I want to get something that's got a total of that is greater than 15,000. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to execute my filter, and then I'm going to close this, and now I've brought in my filtered list of journal entries. So the keep visible is a pretty handy feature, and the filter above is a good handy feature too. So how does the automatic journal entries get created? Well, if you go into, say, your sales AR, we're going to go into AR invoice. We're going to see if we find an invoice. We got an invoice here. Now what you'll notice is these icons across the top are dynamic. It means that they light up when there is some relevant activity that's available to you based on the screen that you're looking at. So as soon as I got into this invoice screen, it allowed me to access a lot more information. And one of them is the transaction journal. So I can go, okay, I want to see what the journal entry looks like for that invoice. And I can bring up that journal entry and have a look at it. It tells me, you know, it came from this invoice, there's the origin number, and any additional information. So you'll notice that things are in gray, and that means that you're not able to change that. In SAP, if you want to eliminate the impact of a journal entry, you have to do a reversing entry to close it. Okay, my handy dandy close all my windows, and now I'm going to go back into financials. And so we've talked about journal entry. The other level of accounting is journal vouchers. Now, I like journal vouchers because it allows you to accumulate a bunch of journal entries where you might use it as at year end as you're making your adjusting entries. And the nice thing about the journal voucher is that you can include it in the calculation of your financial statements. So you don't have to post it. You can still get your financial statement, and then you can look at what your expected outcome is to make sure that everything posted properly. Nothing worse than $1 million entry on going the wrong direction, because it takes $2 million to correct it. Okay, so in the journal vouchers, it allows you to add a bunch of lines. I just did a simple journal voucher, and for 100,000, just picked a couple of accounts. Now, if you look at this, I got a computer equipment account, and that I've posted 100,000 to. So when I go down and I go into my financial reports and I go into financial statements in my balance sheet, I'm going to run a copy of my balance sheet, and you'll notice here that my long-term assets is 484,000. This is where the levels come in. Okay, this is level 1. You've got assets, liability, and equity. You've got level 2, which brings you down to your current versus long-term. You have level 3, which brings you subcategories within your current assets and your long-term assets. And finally, level 4, which is your accounts. But as you can see, you can go to 10 levels if you want to have that complex a chart of accounts. I wouldn't want to manage it myself, but it's available for you to do that. So back to this illustration, here I have in my assets, let's go back to level 3, my other capital assets, 484,000, and that's a straight up balance sheet. So I'm going to go back, and when I look at my options that are available for selecting my balance sheet, you'll notice that, hey, I can add journal vouchers. So now I'm going to add that journal voucher. I'm going to rerun my report. Now I have 584,000. That's exactly what my expected outcome was. I'm going to post that account. So that is a nice feature of the journal vouchers, and that's one of the reasons I like it. And it comes in pretty handy when you're doing your opening balances or you're consolidating with another company. You can create a large journal voucher with a lot of accounts in it, and then you can run your P&L and balance sheet against it to see if you've got your expected outcome before you post a large number of transactions, and then you spend hours hunting through to find out where your issues were. There's a bunch of different options there on the balance sheet. Okay, so close all my windows. Okay, posting templates. This is where you can set up a template if you have pretty specific posting requirements like my utilities. You set up a template in here and you can get your distribution for your template. Let's see. So there's my utility one that I set up, and you can use that posting template to do that. Reoccurring postings. Here you set up a journal entry that's going to recur. You put in the frequency that it's going to occur, and then it will execute for you during your month end. So for simplicity's sake, you may take your fixed assets and create a straight line depreciation function just for your monthly reporting that you're going to balance out and reconcile at year end, and then you just set it up once and let it go through and post automatically. That's one feature that you can use for the recurring postings. Exchange rate differences. Here, this allows you to reconcile the differences between your foreign currency account and your Canadian currency account. What it does is at the date that you set the exchange rate, it revalues and sets up the variance, the difference between the accounts, and balances them out. The conversion of differences, this is where you actually convert the differences to the amount that you want it to have. You can do it either at the business partner level or the GL account level. Financial report templates. All of the financial reports that you get, you have an opportunity to adjust to your specific situation. So you may want to produce a financial report for a department, and you don't have all of the accounts included in their P&L. You can customize. So basically, you want to take this P&L and then define a new one, make a copy of it, and so I've gone across and I've done a Canadian English one. You could do a multilingual, so you can use different templates for that. I'm going to skip that one, journal voucher. So here's the reports. You can get your journal voucher report from, which journal voucher is posted. Fixed assets. This is a pretty handy feature within SAP, especially if you're asset intensive in your companies. You'll want to set up your assets using the fixed asset, and it'll automatically do the capitalization and all of the functions within the capital transactions occur here right from accounts payable. You declare it as a fixed asset when you buy it, and it flows through here. You put it in its asset class, and automatically it'll do the calculation of the depreciation on a monthly basis. So it's a very nice feature if you have a lot of capital assets that you're looking after. It cuts down on the type of work that you have to do on year end. Everybody knows that, you know, Excel sheets are out there, but there's always mistakes on most of those, so it's worth having your fixed assets running for you. Internal reconciliations, the reconciliation function is here. A lot of the transactions in SAP automatically reconcile. So for example, if you create an invoice and then create a matching credit note, it will automatically reconcile. If it doesn't balance with a related transaction, it will not. And then you have to do a manual reconciliation. You can go back in and look at past reconciliations and fix them to if you've got a problem with it. So you can go down and choose your accounts, and then it'll bring up a list of all of the reconciliations that you've completed. So you can go in here and adjust that match up so for your reconciled accounts. Budget setup, you have the opportunity to create budget scenarios, so you can have as many scenarios as you want. Typically we did a budget and then a budget to forecast as we went through the year. So at the end of the month we'd redo the budget from a forecast point of view, so you could have your actual to budget comparisons.
James, I have a question on budgets. Can you do anything on budgets but per project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because once you put the budget in there, then you have the accounts that you're posting to, so you would identify the accounts and the projects related to it. I'm confident. I'm not 100% sure. I might be shooting from the hip here on that one.
Okay, but we could validate that with support. If somebody wanted to do something like that, they could validate with the support desk.
Yeah, and it would make sense to me. Yeah, look, there's the project right there. So there you got the scenario where you created your budget, your distribution rule, and your project.
Oh, you've got the project there. Good. Okay.
Yep, yep. So you can budget down to the project level. So I guess shooting from the hip wasn't so bad. Okay, cost accounting. In here we have the advanced cost accounting. The way that it's structured, you have dimensions and cost centers. Your dimensions are typically your top level cost centers. So departments, you know, you have product processes and functions. I worked in the medical industry, and our dimensions were the region, the Western region, the sales rep, and the hospital. So there was 3 levels that we could do the cost accounting for. That way you don't have to maintain a segmented chart of accounts. A lot of companies have segmented chart of accounts to deal with this, but it's only a North American phenomena. Nobody else in the world is using segmented accounts. They're using these dimensions. The reason being is every time you put something new in, you don't have to create a whole new chart of accounts. All you have to do is deal with these dimensions. You have your various cost centers that you have. I'm going to go into find mode, and it'll give me a list of my cost centers. So I have a list of cost centers that I do my distribution to. Then you're able to generate your budget versus cost accounting, so you can get down to the cost accounting level for your budgeting as well. Okay, and finally you have your financial reports. In your financial reports, I'm going to close all the windows, we have the accounting reports, and it starts out with, you know, you have the GL accounts with the business partners, so you can click the whole set account. You're most likely interested in receivables with the business partner level, so you probably would run a report like this, and it will give you a list of your business partners. So your accounts receivable is your control account, and then this would come up with the detail of what's in there. and you can do it in domestic or foreign currency. The general ledger is basically a trial balance. Without the business partner, you select all of them. Now, this can be tricky because I dealt with a client last week, and his P&L balanced with the auditor, his balance sheet balanced with the auditor, his trial balance didn't, and he was confused as to why it was, and it was because of the options that were selected in here. You need to have your opening balances selected in order to get your trial balance to work properly. So here we have, you know, opening balance from the fiscal year or opening balance for the entire company. So once you select that, then you can run your report and say, okay, and it'll bring up your account. Now, the other thing that was in there was the revaluation was an option as well, and that is typically, if you're running international financial reporting standards, you have to revalue accounts to current value. There is no fully depreciated assets in international financial reporting standards. So it's a function that's quite handy for if you're doing IFRS reporting. Okay, under the aging, we have the aging reports of both of our two major control accounts, your accounts receivable and your accounts payable. Everybody's familiar with aging reports. And then your transaction accounts. So that's under accounting. And then under financials, you have your balance sheet and P&L. So your balance sheet. So now I'm looking at my balance sheet. I'm looking at level 3. You know, we're back to my $484,000 my capital assets because I haven't posted my $100,000 journal voucher. If I want to get into more detail, I can open up the level 4 accounts and have a look at where those balances are. The trial balance, again, here it's tricky. You want to make sure you're adding your closing balances in order to get the proper accounts. You want to make sure you look at all of the opening balances for the period. And again, now you have your trial balance at the different levels too. So it allows you to, you know, look at everything from 30,000 feet and then work your way down. And typically I like to do that myself where I'm, you know, understanding the high level to get down to the low level, because the high level is going to indicate to you if there's an issue anyway when you know your financial statements. Okay, so that's the P&L, and then you have your statement of cash flow to do your cash flow forecasting and statement of cash flows. Okay, and I would say that that pretty well covers the topic. Okay, so we have had an opportunity to look at the financial basics. We reviewed the financial settings, looking at GL determination and adding accounts. We talked about the sources of automatic journal entries, so we're talking about the income statement, the delivery notice, the on the payable side, your goods receipt, purchase order, and your accounts payable invoice and your payments. Those create the automatic journal entries. The chart of accounts is structured by what looks like drawers in SAP, but that's the logical portioning of the financials with your assets, liability, and equity for your balance sheet, and then your P&L accounts. We've looked at posting a journal entry. We looked at reversing entries. We talked about setting up a percentage distribution entry. And finally, we had a look at the financial accounting and reports. And that is it. Is there any questions?
Does anyone not have any questions? If you do, you could ask now, or again, you've got, James, if you just want to put up the, on the final page there with our information for the support desk, you can send your email to support@forjestic.com. And there you go, support. And like I said in our last session, this creates an automatic ticket in our new ticketing portal. So you can follow up on that portal as well. If you don't have access to the portal and you want to, again, send a message to support@forjestic.com and ask them for access to the portal. And like they say, we have 30 minutes every time for every issue that you have. What we always suggest is if you have 3 issues, don't put in just one email to cover the 3 issues. Put in one email to each issue, so it'll give you your maximum of 30 minutes per each issue, so you really take advantage of that free support. Our next session, guys, is going to be on the 17th of February, so it's in 2 weeks, and we're going to be covering inventory management, so that should be really interesting as well. So thanks again, everyone. You've got our contact there. I'm going to download this and send you all your copy. And if you have any help, there's our contact. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. And I'll send out the links next week for the one that'll be on the 17th. Thanks, James. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye, guys.